Thank you. High five. Well, hello. Well, I get walk-on music. Check that out. That was not my choice of music. I'd have had David Bowie if that had been me. So I'm here today to talk to you about thinking in 3D. My name's Doye. I'm an executive producer, and I tend to work with some of the world's top leading production companies, tech companies, and develop content that is edutainment. It's implementations of experimental projects, but predominantly my work is about building skills, teams, and people. And one of the key factors that I'm finding in this industry is that the more people that we experiment with and the more people we bring into this world, the more eclectic the mix and the fun that we have. So I came today on purpose to actually just talk to you about my background, but equally about the way that I think about creating content in 3D. This image up here is of a project that I created with some colleagues of mine called Ship of the Dead. And this is a really good example, I'll speak about it later, about how we collaborated with 3D thinkers to come up with concept art, a mixed reality experience. Collaboration between creative technologists, film, TV, game, creative arts is an ever-evolving industry, and it grows and develops as we move on. I'll endeavour to highlight some of the interesting skills and developments emerging, focusing specifically on 3D thinkers that don't necessarily come from tech. So what do I mean by 3D thinking? People will think and work day to day in 3D, not looking at screens, but people that work in an environment to create. So they could be sculpture artists, architects, dancers, people that come from a background where every day they're in a studio, they're marking out a space, and they move within that space, they create within that space. So for me, personally, coming from a dance background, all I do is think about the peripheral. I'm going to give you an example. When I was training as a dancer, we used to talk about the 180 vision. As a dancer, you're trained to do specific ballet moves, but you wiggle your fingers so your eyes are seeing either side. That becomes your 180 screen if you're making content in 180. So for me, I always think about that peripheral. When I'm looking at people, I'm always told, I'm always looking in different directions when I'm talking to people. I look people in the eye, but I'm always thinking of the broader picture. It's innate in me to think in that 180, but it's also innate in me to think about 360. Because in dance, one of the things you learn is when you're standing and the dancers are behind you, you have to feel it. You have to feel where that's coming from. So I apply these skills when making content in 3D worlds, virtual reality, mixed reality, even the 180 content. I use these skills. So why do I raise this point? We are creating metaverses that are 3D worlds. We're creating metaverses that are 360 worlds. I've made a lot of content in 180 with a company called Atlantic Productions, and we've worked in partnership with Meta. And that content, 180 content, is footage that's brought out of the archived. We've then scaled it up using AI tools, composited it, stretched images, all things. But I'm always thinking, people look at the detail, but I'm always thinking about what's going on around. Is it too fuzzy? Is it making me sick? What's it doing? I'm not always looking at the detail within that. And that's why I think we all need to start thinking about who we collaborate with when we make this content. So, professional trained dancers are natural 3D thinkers. What trained dancers will do, and directors, and also sculpture artists, is they will map a space, they will map out what they want to do physically, not on a 2D screen. One of the things that this experience here is the Ship of the Dead I was explaining to you about. This particular product has had a variety of thinkers in this space that have come from different backgrounds. And I'll explain and give you examples of some of those later. But this experience, the flow of this experience, is diorama content that moves you around a space. It's also something you could put on a tabletop if you really wanted to. But you still need to think about where you're taking that person. Is it just going to be you're watching it like a television screen? If it's a diorama, that's a waste. You want to walk around it. You want to explore it. You want to take in that user journey. I'm going to show you a piece of choreography that dates back to Louis XIV. This piece of choreography is how dancers used to map down user journeys. This is a user journey. Okay, we don't know where a table's going to be in a room, where someone's sofa is, but we can start to think about this. So in this, it would have been an open space, a beautiful, elaborate hall where people have been dancing through a space, but in choreography, you can map out things on the floor. In rehearsals, we use electrical tape. It's really a bit simple. We get lecky tape and we put, oh, there's the table there, and this is this little bit over here, and there's a prop over here. And actually, actors and dancers have to move around that space and think about those things. But you can still create user journeys that enable you to think about this differently, that you can take into account where the tables might be, or how you render and how you anchor particular visuals and experiences within a space, and give people options. But I still think user flow is fundamental to making it feel natural. Once you really know how to move in a space, dancers do this all the time. What they do is they learn it so much that your body takes over. And what I mean by that is you're moving, your head stops thinking about it. Sometimes I used to perform and I'd be thinking about my shopping that night. That's how much my body knew it. That's exactly what happens. I believe the experiences we create should feel the same. They should feel so natural to the people that we are projecting them to, the users, the audiences, that we should be looking maybe at some other skill sets and tools, some 3D thinkers, to help us find those seamless user journeys. Yes, your narrative can do that. Yes, the beats in a story can do that. But actually, if we're going to go down this road of spatial computing, mixed reality, it needs to feel natural. So a good few years ago, I was working with Magic Leap and the Royal Shakespeare Company as a fellow. I learned so much about mixed reality, spatial computing, whatever you want to call it. But one of the products that really stood out to me was something called Tenandi. Some of you may have seen Tenandi, heard of Tenandi. Look it up if you haven't. It's a really beautiful little piece of work. I first experimented with it and found I was moving around the space. I was like, oh, what's this over here? What's that? And when Magic Leap were watching me, they were saying, oh my God, she's dancing through the space. And so it felt really natural. I met the lead creator on it in Venice, and I found out she trained as a dancer. And thought, wow, that's why that felt natural. That's why the user journey flow was so easy. Yes, she worked with UI, UX designers. We have to embrace those people too. But let's maybe think about mixing this up a little bit. So testing in environments I've spoken about, that's really important. I think what we need to do is start to look at the spaces in which we test in. We can, yes, try it in our front rooms, whatever, but I do think we need to map things out a little differently and do it physically. I know that at Magic Leap, they used to have little set-up rooms with all different tables and chairs, and you'd feel like you're in someone's front room, but they were all configured differently. To test it and break it, we have to keep breaking these user journeys to make them flow. So I'm going to give you some examples. Now this visual here, this is actually from an artist, Johanna. Now these are concept art. This is actually an artist concept art, which we're going to be using to create assets. Johanna is an artist, sculpture artist. This is what she does. This is how I tend to start making content. I work with the artists to inform rather than going straight into user journey or just story. What's the visual? What do I want people to feel? What's the aesthetic of this piece? So I'm going to give you some further examples of 3D thinking, not just from a dancer choreographer perspective. Puppetry diorama design. This is a new one that I just stumbled on. During lockdown, working on a project, and a very good friend of mine, Dr. Matt Smith, is a puppeteer. And what I love about Matt's work is that he uses recycled materials. And what he did is he and I spoke online, and he went into a studio. I gave him a story narrative, and I said, look, these are kind of, I think, the scenes I'm looking at, but I'm not sure what this user flow will be. I'm not sure what these mini dioramas will look like in mixed reality. In a week, he'd created all the mini dioramas for me. And so, in a safe space with masks on and everything else, I walked into a studio and felt this beautiful flow around the space that took me from one little diorama scene to another, and there was these beautiful little projections he put around it. And it was all just taken from junk and things that he could find in a space. But what it told me is that his puppetry created the diorama scene and started my user flow journey. And so ever since then, I've decided maybe I need to think out of the box of how we develop some of this content. I'm going to show you a very quick video if it works. There you go. Hopefully. There you go. That is Matt's skeleton puppets. I don't know if this will play. There you go. So those skeleton puppets that he created informed the aesthetic of the skeletons that we're going to be creating in the mixed reality experience. So his puppetry didn't just create the user flow, it also helped me find what's that design, what's that innovation in how something looks, where's the quality coming from? You know, what we need to start looking at is individuality in some of the content that we're creating. So that, I think, is a really good example. And I will always now work with puppeteers to help me create user designs and experiences. So this next video I'm going to show you is just a quick trailer for a project, and I'll explain in a minute the artist and her approach to how she sort of develops the aesthetic and content for this. That should work.
Plants. They are the very basis of all life on Earth. We can unravel their deepest secrets. How they get help from some animals, but have to battle with others, and survive against the odds.
I'll stop there. We've got back to that one. So that particular short clip I showed you in Game Engine, the aesthetic of that piece came from Iona McEwen. Iona is a director, but actually she's a craft maker. Iona knits. She sits on the tube, and what I love about her, she's always making things while she's sitting on the tube. She has a lanyard for the company we both work for, Atlantic Productions, and she's embroidered beautiful things on the lanyard. She always thinks about color palette. She thinks about how something is tactile. How does it make you feel? Her approach to that design concept came because she did so much research that was informed by how something felt in a space, how it looked in a space, and she was absolutely clear and adamant with the whole tech team, especially when it came to doing the previs, this is what I want, this is what I'm after. She didn't go, oh, what can we use? What have we got in Unity and Unreal? What can we buy in? She was absolutely clear. And every day, because of her making clothes and all sorts of things, they come into the way that she looks at the aesthetic of something. And I feel with that particular introduction, it really rung true to who she was and who she is. And so even though she is a director and we've created content in 180 with this, which is the footage I explained earlier with Kingdom of Plants, it still always has for her that flow of color, tactile, really interesting. So this next slide I'm showing you now, which is Ship of the Dead, going back to my diorama and the puppeteer, the puppeteer's skeletons informed this visual. And the reason being is we were pitching, and I needed some nice concept art, as one does. And I found that Rob, who did the concept art for this, created the skeletons in origami. So what he did is he created these little origami skeletons based on Matt's colors, what Matt had done with all of the, with the milk bottles that were the skeletons I showed you in the video, and created this concept art, which has helped us pitch, which has helped us raise the funds, which is helping us move the project on. But what Rob does is he creates again in 3D before he even goes to the 2D design. So I suppose what I'm getting to with all of this is that we're in a really interesting industry where we can collaborate more. We can look at, working in with different artists, different sectors. But one of the biggest problems that I have had over the years of all the clients I work with, I have to help make budgets. So I get given budget templates from clients. And within those budget templates are lists of the roles that have been in previous projects. I don't see puppeteers in there. I don't see craft makers, sculptors, architects. So I'm forever fighting. Can we get somebody else interesting in this? Can we look at doing this a little bit differently? And now that we have some of the big players coming into this space, Apple are releasing their new headset, Meta's new headset, which is brilliant, is on the market. We have now, the big players are here. The big TV firms are stepping into this world. Their budgets are going to be a little bit better, I'm hoping. So maybe we can build out the teams. Maybe we can be a little bit more of a experimental, so that a UI UX designer works with a puppeteer, works with someone like Iona. It's looking at these different ways of working. And what I'm finding is every time I go in, because I exec produce, I go into clients and I'm helping them come up with pitches and I'm helping them, devise these budgets, is I'm having to work to systems that are already there. Maybe we need to break the system slightly. Maybe we need to break the rules slightly. And so what I stand here saying to you today is that 3D thinkers, we need to embrace these 3D thinkers to build more collaborations and maybe push some of the quality and some of the art forms and some of the work that we're creating. So this is saying I'm going to give you today. We have to have faith in mixing up the mixed reality production teams. Because if we don't make those changes, if we don't experiment, then we don't have the innovation, and it's only us that's going to make the difference. I also really believe we could invest and embrace a fearless curiosity together and push the boundaries of innovation together. Thank you. So I'm going to open it to the floor in case anyone has any questions. Maybe not. Oh, there's a mic over there, I think.
That is a mic, yes. I think a lot of the critique or criticism of kids playing video games was they were just glass-eyed in front of the television with a controller in their hands. And VR has opened that up, and you see somebody coming out of a sweaty Beat Saber session. We've changed that paradigm now. What do you feel of the game? There was a game that predated Beat Saber, Audio Shield, and you felt like you could dance after playing it because it guided you through these beautiful moments.
Brilliant.
Okay, great. What do you feel are the games that almost take the player movement as a goal and then retrofitted that to a game title? There's a La Péri, you might know. It's a recreation of a famous dance piece, a ballet. But who do you think is doing really interesting things in designing player movement just now? Okay, so
gaming sector is probably slightly different to some of these projects I've spoken about. But actually, when you say about game design or people that are pushing the boundaries of that, I think it's always going to come from the indie game developers, actually, because I think they're going to be pushed. They always tend to push the game narrative forward. I can't talk specifically about any particular game that jumps out at me. I'm old school gaming, so I could probably talk to you about some very old ones. But for me, I think that the simpler the game is simpler that user flow is better at the moment. I would say that probably some of the best thinkers in this space are people that are thinking about probably spatial computing and mixed reality have a kind of way of thinking about game in that sector. Because game, yes, you put a headset on, and a lot of game companies are probably a bit old school in the way that they think. So I wouldn't necessarily say some of the big game development companies are leading the way. But I think going back to your point about who's leading the way in pushing the art forms, I always think it's the indie makers, whether that's an experience in a headset, great companies that are here pitching their products. It's usually the startups and the indies that are willing to kind of take the risk on the innovation. And that's why I say the big players they have bigger budgets. If we pitch with some of these thinkers in it, we'll be able to push the boundaries of it. Hope that answers your question slightly.
So I'm an Unreal Engine developer as well as a musician.
Brilliant.
And hearing the way you talk about dance, it made me really think about some things that go on in my mind about how I want to, perhaps use Unreal Engine as part of a live set in set design and everything. And another thing I really think about, the way you talk about having a sculpture and really seeing how it feels and finding the imperfections. I was thinking about how music, you don't just feel it in your ears, you feel it in your body.
Yes.
And there are different spectrums of frequency which you feel in different parts of your body. And I was thinking about taking that, analyzing that, and bringing that into like a automated virtual environment generation thing. So I was just wondering, all this weird stuff I just said, does it connect any wires for you?
Completely, because I think drawing on your musical roots and seeing how something makes you feel when you're designing it is important. I mean, I resonate with music, in a big way. As I was walking here, and I'll be honest, I was walking here because I knew I had to do this talk and I was a bit nervous. So of course, what do? I put on music. I put on music that's going to make me feel uplifted. I put on music that's going to make me go, okay, I'm going to get out there and say what I need to say. And I think what you're telling me is that the music makes you feel, and what you're trying to do is try and find a way within your game engine design to add that emotional element. Maybe it's just going back to the roots of your music and finding some of those stems and starting with the roots of those stems and see where that takes you in some of that design. I would want to push you right back to almost the beginning, put the Unreal Engine here, do something musical, and then try and bring that into how that design happens. I always encourage artists to go back further. This is what I was saying earlier about this, looking at a 2D screen to design something out, a user flow, actually go further back and mark it on a floor. Tape it. It's the same thing for you. Go back to those musical roots and see how that informs what you're going to create and see how it makes you feel.
Sometimes you first need something in order to augment it.
Yes, you do. Right? Absolutely, you do. Absolutely, you do. I think there's a microphone over here.
I can speak loud.
Oh, good. A natural theatre performer. I like that.
My question is simple. You mentioned architecture, dioramas,
Yeah.
and puppetry. And how do you, in your productions, have you used those in collaboration also for animation or for not just the flow, but also the potential interaction, like an improv piece, or
puppetry? I have. Do you know puppetry and motion capture or volumetric motion capture go hand in hand? So a long time ago when I stepped into this space, and I'm running over, so I ought to stop in a minute, it was motion capture that brought me in. Of course, motion capture, suit, movement, that feels very natural to me. But I, again, was working with a puppeteer, so we experimented by putting puppetry in. It was really good fun. And he said to me, mocap is very natural to that. So yes, it does go hand in hand. I'd love to experiment more. I've been told I have to wrap up, so I don't want to take any more time because there's more people who need to get on this stage. And I just want to thank everybody for coming and supporting, and it's very lovely to be here. Thank you, AWE. Thank you, sponsors. Brilliant event. Thanks very much.